Hey, this is Mad Movie Mark with the Mad Movie Mark Movie Review. Thank you for joining me as I review the 1985 Japanese comedy Tampopo. Oh well, man, I hope that's not true because I still have a lot of movies I still have to review. So we have a bit of an upward climb, and I hope I have some wind beneath my sails. I'm reviewing every movie that has 100% fresh rating on Rotten Tomatoes. I'm giving them all a score of 1 to 10. I'm reviewing them chronologically, and I started in the 1920s silent movie era. Now I'm at 1985 with Tampopo. This movie has a 100% fresh rating from the critics and a 93% fresh rating from the audience, which is a pretty awesome score for the audience. Now, when I first read the description of this movie, I was a little worried that it was not going to be funny and not entertaining. The description is two Japanese milk truck drivers help a restaurant owner learn how to cook great noodles. But I learned that I need to stop judging a book by its cover because this movie is absolutely fantastic. This movie is hilarious. This movie is endearing. This movie really cares about the craft of noodle making, which sounds probably crazy, but it does it in such a way that it really makes you feel something that you might have not felt about noodle making before. So, when this movie opens up, we are introduced to a man in a white suit who we can presume is a gangster and his girlfriend there in a movie theater. He has basically a whole, he's in the front row, and he has a whole table of food with him, and he's complaining about the people who in the movie theaters crunch on food and make a lot of noises. And he says that when you die, you play a bit of a movie in your head. And when that movie plays for him, he doesn't want to hear people making noises. He doesn't want to hear people crying for him. He just wants to allow the movie to play in his head right before he goes. And I thought this was a really strong opening. I thought it was very well written, very well acted, and it's really deep and really meaningful, and I really enjoyed it. After that, we get kind of a second opening where there's the two truck drivers who are the main characters. The predominant one is named Goro. Now, Goro is a bit of like a cowboy type character where he wears a cowboy hat. He strolls into this town and he meets a woman named Tampopo who has her own noodle restaurant. She is being kind of bullied by this gentleman in the restaurant who says that she needs to close her shop because the noodles are bad and no one ever goes there and she should just quit and marry him. Now, she is a widow and she has a child who frequently gets beat up after school because he doesn't know how to defend himself. And basically Goro tells this guy to stop talking to her like that and stop making fun of her. And he gives the woman some tips on how she could make her noodles better. And as he's going to leave the town, she runs up to him and she says, "Please, like, tell me everything you know about making these noodles because I feel like with your help, this can really be something big. We can really make great food. We can make food that people will enjoy. Everyone will want to come and eat the noodles at my restaurant." And you can tell that she's like, she wasn't passionate about it before because she didn't have the means. She didn't have any reason to believe that she could become better. But now that she has Goro, she feels as if she can finally be the noodle maker that she wants to be. So Goro and his truck driving friend end up agreeing to this. They put her through a series of like trials. They pretend like they're customers, and he gives her pointers on how to tell if a customer really is enjoying your food, how to tell if the customer is not enjoying your food.
ほらそこだほらなんかそこで客の顔を見る自分の作ったラーメンに愛情があればそれを客がどんな顔して食べるのか気になるだろうが
はい、すいません。
今客何やってる
スープを飲んでます。
おかしいと思わねえか
えっと、
おかしいだろうが熱い熱いはずのラーメンのスープが
And he really, preps her for what's to come. And then he gives her a bunch of like Karate Kid like stuff later on to perform as well to make her into this better noodle maker. He also enlists the help of a lot of different people around the town. It's almost like a Seven Samurai type deal where he's pulling in all these different experts who are going to, save the woman in the town and save her business and make her the best that she can be. Later on, they tour other people's noodle shops. There's noodle shops everywhere in this movie, and they tour other people's noodle shops to kind of get an idea of what these other people are doing, so that they could take all the best practices from all these noodle shops and kind of combine them into one and make the great noodle shop. There's a specific scene later on in the movie that I think is hilarious, where there's like this sensei of broth who they bring in because it's really hard to get the broth perfect, and she has a really hard time doing it. In fact, when she goes to visit one of these other noodle shops, she's confronted by the owners of the noodle shop, and they realize who she is. And Goro says, "Why don't you come down and try our noodles? And if they're not the best, we'll be very surprised because we make the best noodles around." Now she realizes that her broth isn't any good, and she has this nightmare where they break into her shop, and they wrestle her onto the cutting board, and they put her head near the boiling pot of broth, and she's like screaming because it's hilarious once you realize it's a dream.
なんだこの匂いは。えい、そのスープ見せてみやがれ。
ちょっと待ってください。ちょっとお願いですから。すいません。やめろ、うちの母さんに何するんだよ。痛たたたたた。
どけ。
And she wakes up. But there's a sensei of broth that they go to like this homeless encampment, and he's introduced as this guy who used to be an OGBYN, but while he was learning how to cook noodles, his wife took over his practice. So now he's like a homeless noodle sensei.
入って食べてくださいよ。
これ先生、産婦人科の先生だったんだけど、道楽でラーメン屋やってるうちに病院を奥さんと事務長に取られちまった。今じゃここで連中のグルメの。
Which it just reminds me of The Office, where there's this Oriental gentleman on The Office who's like, he used to be a surgeon and he had the steady hands and as a surgeon, but now he's like, he works in an office. It just reminds me of that. I don't know if that's where they got it from, but it's absolutely hilarious that he's like the sensei of broth making. So they end up combining all of their talents together, and with a lot of hard work and a lot of determination, a lot of grit, a lot of heart, they finally are able to get to a point where they're making the finest noodles in town.
これいいね。
こりゃいい。いけますわ。
これレパートリーに加えましょうよ。
名前つけないけまへんな。ネギラーメンか。
ネギそば。
ネギそば。いいですね。これは名物になります。
And also that guy in the beginning who was kind of bullying her, who wanted to marry Tampopo, he ends up getting into a brawl with Goro, and we learn that he is an interior designer. So he offers to design her new building. They make a whole new restaurant for her. They open it up under the name Tampopo, and it ends up becoming a big hit. She serves like the best food in town, and Goro ends up riding off into the sunset. Now, in between this, there is a love relationship that's kind of blossoming with Goro and Tampopo, which is a fantastic love story, especially towards the end of the movie. They're both in a restaurant. They're talking about past relationships that they have. So Goro was married, Tampopo was married. They kind of talk about why the relationships aren't there anymore. Tampopo's husband, I believe, passed away. Goro, he ended up losing his wife and his kid. and it's a very touching and enduring moment in the movie. It's absolutely amazing.
亡った旦那さんはどんな人だったんだ。
いい人だったわ。お酒が好きでせっかちで。五郎さんは奥さんは？
奥さん子供連れて出てっちまった。
どうして？
わかんね
And I was hoping that they would end up together. I really thought that at the end of the movie they were going to end up as a couple. But I guess if we're going along the lines of this is like a modern day Western of sorts, where it's kind of structured in a modern day Western, where the guy rides into town, he recruits all these, like a seven samurai, recruits all these professionals to save the woman, and then he kind of, I guess it would make more sense if he rides out of town and doesn't end up with her, if that's the kind of theme that we're following, usually in the westerns. Although in the movie The Magnificent Seven, I believe that's based off Seven Samurai. I think one of them stayed in the town at the end. But anyway, he ends up leaving, and that's basically the entire movie. There is other like subplots in the movie. One of which is a board meeting that's being had where all the there's like these higher ups in the board of a company, and then the underlings around them. The underlings all wait for the highest person in the corporation to order the food, and then they all order the same thing except for the young guy who kind of orders what he wants, and it's like seen as like taboo and not what you're supposed to do, kind of going against the system, going against the norm, and going against what's right. There's also another scene in the movie where there's a group of women who are learning how to eat noodles properly without making any noise. The girl who's training them in noodle eating is telling the women that in America it's very it's considered rude if you slurp your noodles, the broth of the noodles. So you want to make sure that you make no noise at all. And then at that same time, there's a American in the restaurant who's just going to town on his bowl of noodles. He's slurping it. He's making all kinds of noise. So then they follow suit and they start doing the same thing. These side stories are all about kind of going against the norm, like going against what is considered right in society. And the movie kind of follows that a little bit too. And I think that these are nice little sub stories that are going on. There's one that I could have done without, where the man in the white suit and his girlfriend, they exchange eggs, like an egg, back and forth through each other's mouth. I'm not a huge fan of the food as like an aphrodisiac type thing. I find it disgusting, but to everyone else their own, whatever floats your boat. Didn't do it for me. But these little side stories, these little side stories that they're doing are pretty entertaining, and they're very clever, and they're very hilarious. And a lot of the humor that's provided in the movie is provided in these side stories. At the end of the day, this is a fantastic story. It's a fantastic love story. It's a fantastic underdog story. It's a great story about loving what you do, trying to be the best at what you do. It's even a better Western than some of the Westerns that I've seen. It's definitely better than The Shooting, which is a Western. And it's not even a Western, but it's a better Western than The Shooting was. So at the end of the day, this is just, I would say, as a complete package, as a complete movie, this movie is absolutely fantastic. Like I said, I could have done without there's some aphrodisiac scenes in the movie where they use food as the aphrodisiac. It's mostly the man in the white suit and his girlfriend, which I didn't care for. I could have done completely without those scenes. But it's just a great movie all around. The writing is spectacular. I've never seen a movie that is about the craftsmanship of food, that has like the food as the main character of the movie. I think this is the first movie I've ever seen where like the food is the main character. And how do you structure a movie where the food is the main character, but they do just a great job of it. I'm really happy that I watched this movie. These are the kind of movies that I want to watch with this list, this 100% fresh rating list. To me, it's supposed to be, I mean, I know it's not going to be all the greatest movies of all time because there's so many movies that are on this list that I consider the greatest of all time. But this is a starting point. This is a place where this is a full list that I could find with some of the greatest movies of all time. And this is the kind of movie I expect to watch. This is the kind of movie I expect to see. Something I've never heard of. That's great. That's fantastic. I would watch this again if someone wanted to watch it. I would watch this over and over and over again if people asked me to watch this movie. It's that good. And at the end of the day, I am giving this a 9.5 out of 10. I hope you will join me for my next movie, which is going to be called Vagabond. Have a great day.